Hey, it's Liberty, and today I'm going to be wrapping up my 2023 reading year stats. What am I currently reading? Did I meet my goals for 2023? It's all going to be revealed. I am going to make an in-depth separate favourites video. It's coming. I have, 2 essays to do before the end of January, so it's probably going to be next week. But I've picked top 10 favourites, and I'll be talking all about those, so stay tuned for that. I also am planning to make a video all about 2024 releases that I want to read this year, or that I, at least want to read. I may not get round to them this year, but I'm gonna have them on my TBR. If you enjoy this video, do give it a like, subscribe if you would like to. I make all sorts of videos about books, history, culture, etc. And if you want to buy me a cup of coffee or tea in my case, because I am a walking English stereotype, the link is below. I'm going to get straight into it. So I set my reading goal for 50 books last year, which I did obviously not reach. I started masters and I've had to do a lot of reading for that. So I ended up reading 36 books. My Storygraph says 35. One of them was a NetGalley, which wasn't on Storygraph. I also set a page goal of 10,000 pages. I had no idea what to set it at. I was a bit of a shot in the dark. Not too far off. I ended up doing 11,726 pages in total. So that was quite surprising. Moving on to my moods. My biggest mood was adventurous by quite a lot. The total was 20. I'm not surprised in the slightest. I read a lot of hijinks this year. Next was lighthearted with 13. And third was emotional with 12. Again, none of this is surprising to me. So in terms of pacing, 62% medium pace, 32% fast pace, 6% slow pace. I'm very happy with that. I mean, medium is where I like it. I hate slow-paced books, but I also don't like to sacrifice, character development and all of that good stuff. My reading was literally dominated by fiction, 91%. I only read 3 non-fiction books. And in terms of the length of them, 60% were between 300 to 499 pages. 37% were under 300. One book, which is 3%, was over 500 pages, and that was The Devil's Consort by Anne O'Brien. I did really enjoy that, and I didn't get the sense that it was long. So honestly, my top 3 genres are not surprising at all. Historical is top, then fantasy, then romance. Those 3 kind of stand out. But interestingly, I had 20 genres show up in this little graph, which is 5 more than 2022. So I'm potentially reading a bit more widely. And to absolutely no surprise, audio dominated my 2023, 60%. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, 34% print and 6% digital. I did most of my reading in March, looks like, both in terms of pages and books read. I'm not sure why. I'm trying to remember what I was doing in March. I think not a whole lot. My previous job had ended and my next job hadn't started yet, so I think that was the little... I had a lot of time on my hands, clearly, but the spike in November is definitely because I was commuting to uni and I was a little bit more on top of my reading, so I wasn't frantically doing my reading on the train, so that gave me a lot more time to, have an ebook or an audiobook going. So now I want to take a look at the video that I made at the start of 2023, talking about all the books I wanted to read. Out of the 9 books that I wanted to read, I read 2. And I'm currently reading a 3rd. The books I completed, first one is The Mystery of Thorn Manor by Margaret Rogerson. Now this is the novella to A Sorcery of Thorns, which is a book that I absolutely loved. I really enjoyed the novella. It was great to be back in that world with those characters again. I mention Sorcery of Thorns a lot on all of these videos that I've made, so I won't subject you to that again. But if you don't know anything about it, do check it out on Storygraph or Goodreads. I mean, I absolutely love the story. I love those characters, so couldn't recommend it more highly. The second book that I actually read was Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. Lex is a very talented friend of mine who you may know from me reading their Regency books, Reputation and Infamous. I am actually also currently reading Lex's 3rd Regency book, Trouble, at the moment, which is very good so far. I'm loving it. Gwen and Art Are Not in Love is Lex's first YA novel, which is very exciting. And it's set in the medieval period. The main characters are Gwen, who is the Princess of England, and Arthur, who's a future Duke. and they've been betrothed since they were really young and never liked each other. When they find out they both have love interests who are sort of, not who their family would approve of. For Gwen, it's the only female knight, Bridget. And as for Arthur, well, he has got his eye on Gwen's brother, Gabriel. So when they find that out, they essentially decide to become allies. Alexia's a great writer, and I couldn't recommend this book more highly. It's funny, heartwarming, action-packed. It's like, pure queer medieval hijinks. I'm using that word a lot, but it just feels right. The book that I'm currently reading is The London Seance Society by Sarah Penner. I previously read was it The Lost Apothecary Shop? Something like that by Sarah Penner, and I did enjoy that. I mean, I could really get the sense there was just something missing from that. It's kind of exactly what it sounds like. It's set in 1873, and our main character, Lena, travels from London to Paris to sort of be tutored by this great medium who is called Vaudeline Dallaire. She's sort of doing like an apprenticeship when Vaudeline gets called back to London to investigate the death of the president of the London Seance Society. I'm 55% of the way through. I'm reading it as an audiobook, hence why I'm able to be so specific. I kind of sensed who the villain was quite early on, but I love 19th century historical fiction. I'm invested in Lena as a character, in Lena and Vaudeline. Also, things could still go wrong. I want to see them uncover the mystery. How do they wrap it up? How do they solve it all? So I'm invested. I'm going to keep reading despite, at the point where I am, the villain has revealed themselves to the reader anyway, so it's fine. So I also wanted to set some goals for 2024 in this video. In terms of my literal reading goals on Storygraph, I've set this year 35 books because I hate the message that's you are X number of books behind, you can still catch up, that they send you. And I know you can turn it off, but it's that feeling of pressure, which I just don't want to have this year when I'm reading, because reading is fun. If I read more than 35 books, great. If not, fine. It's not going to disappoint me. I have set a pages goal at 12,000, which is not, it's a few hundred more than I did last year. I know that I read a couple of shorter books this year. Can also set a goal of hours listened on Storygraph, but I'm not going to do that. Two is fine for me. First up is I really want to finish Jane Eyre, my reread, by the time spring comes. I put it on the back burner for a while because, I had uni work and then I got really ill multiple times. Autumn and winter last year were not great for me. So it's time to bring Jane Eyre back out again and finish my reread and sort of really get to cement my thoughts. Because if you watch me frequently, you know that I have very strong feelings about Charlotte Bronte and Charlotte Bronte's writing. I do not like it. And I believe that Shirley is the best thing of hers that I've read. And she ruined it in the end. And I'm so annoyed. I also want to read more fantasy this year. I love fantasy, but I have this tendency to want to save fantasy books for the perfect time. But it means I don't read as much of it as I want to, which I definitely want to change. That's a shift in mentality that I want to completely get rid of. Also, I want to read more NetGalley books this year. If you don't know what NetGalley is, it's a website where you can apply for advanced reader copies of books. If you sort of have a space to review them on, I obviously have this, which I applied for a bunch in November thinking that I wouldn't be approved for any of them because I'd had a run of not being approved for a bunch of things before that, and I got approved for 4 out of 5. So I'm currently reading 2 of those 4 books right now as well. So, I've got plenty of non-degree reading to do to sort of fill my January. And that leads me closely on to my next goal, which is I want to not read so many books at the same time. Again, it puts pressure on me and it takes me months to finish books that way sometimes because, sometimes one can go to the back of my queue and continue to be at the back of my queue. I don't want that. Yeah, I'm trying to limit my books to 4 at one time. I always have one audiobook on the go just because of commuting, and I put it on when I'm cooking and stuff. I'm trying to only read 1 print book at a time as well. And, max 2 ebooks. So I feel like that's a healthy medium to have. And that's kind of all I have to talk about this video. Thank you for watching. Happy 2024. I hope the beginning of this year is treating everyone well. Do let me know in the comments if you've got any particular goals for 2024 reading wise, if there are any particular books that you want to read. Thank you for watching. Happy 2024. I hope the beginning of this year is treating everyone well. Do let me know in the comments if you've got any particular goals for 2024 reading wise. There are any particular books that you want to read. So yeah, that's it from me. Happy reading.